Hello and welcome to the World Crypto Network. Today we're going to start off reading from the great book Crony Capitalism in America by Hunter Lewis. When private interests need a political favor, they know whom to call. It's not the Ghostbusters. It's not. When politicians need money, they also know whom to call. Still not the Ghostbusters. The people involved try to keep most of it concealed behind closed doors. This is the system that prevailed in Russia after the fall of communism. But increasingly, it is America's system as well. Many people regard Wall Street as the epicenter of American capitalism. In reality, it is the epicenter of American crony capitalism. Where Wall Street stops and Washington begins, it is possible to say. This situation was not caused, as many supposed, by the crash of 2008. Rather, the crash was caused by the long-lasting Wall Street-Washington partnership. But the problem extends far beyond Wall Street, to every corner of America. If we are going to do anything about our present economic problems, and also give the poor a chance at a better life, we will need to eliminate crony capitalism and restore an honest economy. Although full of hair-raising stories, this book is about solutions. It tells us in clear and simple terms what is wrong and what needs to be done about it. Crony Capitalism in America by Hunter Lewis. No, different Hunter than Thomas Hunter. But he's also on the show. Yeah, we do have Matt Bitcoins here. Matt Bitcoins, what's up?
How's it going, Max? Having a good afternoon. Looks like we got a whole bunch of people here today.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a good one, right? We also have Gabriel Devine.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to see you, and welcome to Blake.
And yes, Blake Anderson also here. What's up?
Hey, I didn't even get a chance to clean up or clean myself up, but I got an invitation from Thomas Hunt, and everybody knows you don't say no to an invitation from Thomas Hunt, so here I am.
Yeah, you can't say no to that, right? And maybe he's already available as well. We have Rico from Paris.
What's up, guys? Yes, checking in from Paris. It's 11 o'clock, and it's pretty hot out, but I'm really excited about this conversation to see where we go with it. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So we're going to start off with Gabriel Devine. You wanted to talk about the interesting topic of, the equities and digital commodities that we can now build because of the scarce digital resources that Bitcoin makes available. So Gabriel, what are your thoughts on that? You're muted.
You are muted, thoroughly muted, Gabriel.
Censorship.
Hello. Testing.
Censorship resistance.
There we go.
Testing. So it's not necessarily Bitcoin that actually I'm going to talk about, but it's definitely not equities either. So specifically commodities, and I'm talking about physical commodities, but that are part of the computing and networking industries, digital technology commodities. So basically, electrical power is a commodity. It's scarce, right, by definition. Bandwidth, also scarce. That's a commodity. Storage, scarce. Cycles, flops, hash rate, that's all scarce commodities. Bitcoin happens to be a digital commodity money that is whose basis is the physical scarcity of electrical power. I'm starting to think that it's possible. When people say, let me interrupt myself. When people say, oh, it's possible there can only be one proof of work blockchain, I wonder if it's possible to create a native digitally scarce commodity like Bitcoin with a different digital computing technology commodity such as bandwidth, this is what MadeSafe is doing, and that's why I like their idea, even though the way they're doing it might not work. They're taking a cut. They're very centralized. So it's I think you'd have to fork it and stuff. So that's like it's iffy because there's a company there. But the concept of commoditizing cycles, storage, bandwidth, and possibly cycles instead of hash power, something like that, might be you might be able to create different digital commodity monies or digital commodities. Probably not monies. You'll have one that's a money, the electrical power, because it underlies the other ones. But I think you could have and this could be colored Bitcoin too. I mean, this is something that you could build on top of Bitcoin, but it would be measuring a different scarce commodity, right? So, but that's interesting actually to think about that. You could build, if you built it as a colored coin or a Bitcoin fiat or a side chain, something like that. I mean, probably better just a Bitcoin colored coin. I wonder if you could use them to measure these other, scarce things, so that, because the whole point is you have to have a proof of the resource, right? So proof of work gone into it with flops or hash rate, proof of bandwidth, right? There's some sort of a cryptographically secured system that measures bandwidth, storage, cycles donated to the network, and then you would get paid back, or you would create this stuff actually. So it would be like a seigniorage, similar to Bitcoin with whatever issuance or seigniorage pattern. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I do think that it is quite difficult to introduce scarcity from outside the system, but rather that it's easier to create scarcity within a blockchain and then use this scarce space within the blockchain for something, for example, like transactions. But Blake,
that's isn't that proof of stake?
Not necessarily, I wouldn't say so. Bitcoin has a scarce resource in the blockchain, but still uses proof of work.
Bitcoin
the scarcity comes from the electrical power.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good point, and I think that Bitcoin is very interesting because the incentive model combines things like electricity, which is a very, very real resource, but it also it feeds into the digital resources very, very, very well. So you take something that's physical and tangible, more or less electricity, and then it interfaces with technology and with the digital space very, very easily. When we take other things aside from ledger entries that have this input of power, it becomes almost exponentially more difficult. I think that you were in the conversation before, maybe you weren't. One of the conversations that we were having with Valtoro Josh was trying to tokenize gold and the rate of decay that the network value would have because of the physical cost of securing it. And energy, the input system, is very, very interesting because it's a pure input system. There's the lottery of who's going to be getting the key access, and then they have the pragmatically incentivized change mechanism to be able to go ahead and change that ledger. That is the simplest version of what you're talking about, and was still very, very hard to invent. To try to extrapolate that into digitizing other things and then incentivizing them and securing them, it becomes a very, very tricky problem. I think that you're right that eventually we will want to digitize and decentralize these other things, but the problems that start to bubble up become extremely difficult to tackle. Like you were saying,
it's like exponentially more difficult, or just another engineering hurdle?
I think that it is very possible that it becomes exponentially more difficult to secure something that is not so simple, because as we know, Bitcoin is a very, very, very simple base layer ledger technology that has had these various different incentive systems that really meld sociology and technology together in a way that's extremely impressive to those that understand how the incentive system works so much more aggressively than, say, freeware software ever did. And then trying to basically port those types of use cases over to other things, I think that you hit the nail on the head, that it becomes almost exponentially more difficult to do that. Not that we shouldn't be talking about those things, not that we shouldn't be moving towards it, but an extreme amount of skepticism should be viewed in terms of, we're going to ICO this.
Let's talk specifically for a second. Let's just take storage, right? Something like dumping files and scanning files for their size and dumping them on, in a network, and dumping them on like, sharded drives or whatever you want to call it, split up drives, and, just basically, encrypting and decrypting sort of data packets that are, it's kind of like there's always ways to spoof things, but measuring storage isn't that sophisticated, right? I mean, it's
well, it's also easy money. It's not hard money. I mean, storage, yes, physically creating it is not an easy thing to do, but generating, you know, a lot of storage is not as hard as generating a lot of electricity. So I think
you got to build the hard drives or buy the hard drives and set them up.
And I agree, at that stage, storage becomes difficult. But with how easy it is to get storage and how many people would be willing to, if you had a botnet that was working together, I think that getting a whole bunch of storage space together is a different category of difficulty than getting a whole bunch of electricity together that burns really, really, really fast. It's one of the things that people criticize about Bitcoin. Oh, it burns a lot of electricity, but it's also one of the things that makes the input system really, 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 quote, difficult or hard money. Gold is hard money because it's hard to get it out of the ground, or it's hard to spray cyanide on a whole bunch of old circuitry to melt that out. It's a poisonous, very, very tricky process. And I think that what we risk is if somebody puts a whole bunch of storage online, that that's almost not a quote unquote hard enough type of value to add to the system, which makes it a very, very difficult problem in terms of reaching this stable equilibrium in terms of a total value loop proposition that would make this stuff work. Again, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's an extremely slippery greased pig of a problem.
Yeah, you got it. There's the engineering side of the software and the software architecture that will be required in order to communicate without any trust, and being able to bypass the layers between the client that's running this colored coin or whatever or system and the bare metal, which is what you're actually getting at with any other type of commodity. I mean, look at it: bandwidth, storage, and cycles. That's basically your network controller, your CPU, and your hard drive controller. So there's all these levels in between there. So you got to make that whole entire chain trustless and create. And then there's the game. That's just the engineering. Then there's the game theory side, where you need to create a system that, because I mean, brute forcing, just going backwards on the encryption is basically like
I just wanted to add one more layer to my point. Is that energy is energy. Data storage is specific data that's stored, so it's not as fungible. So that's another layer of complexity that would have to be tackled. I think Rico wanted to weigh in here.
Yeah.
No, I did. I just was thinking what Blake had said about the electricity is kind of the built-in algorithm that doesn't allow anybody to hack it. It's on its own system, checking itself, with everybody having a chance to check the ledger as well. But more so the fact that we have the minings and the rigs, and they're on a system themselves. And we've seen, well, we haven't seen this, but we've heard about if somebody wanted to go in and take their nodes off they could take it off if they want to turn off those the miners. And I do think that the miners play a huge part of it. I think we're seeing it slowly as it starts to build, but it's kind of nice because they keep themselves in check with the algorithm. So I'm not a huge coder, but I know the basics about it. So maybe Thomas, you can say something about the mining that I know you know a little bit more about it than I do.
Why are we talking about mining?
Well, I think that his point with mining was that there's a tape-out process. There's a lot of hard, difficult work that goes into cramming that into a more condensed nanometer chip. You have to reach tape-out. You have to put lots of money in, and that's a stabilizing effect on how fast the hash can come out.
I think it shares that quality with storage. Storage is a really similar process. You got to set up your data center. You got to get your power in to run your drives. You got to set up the network to communicate back and forth. I mean, it's relatively similar, but it's the other side. I think that's the really hard side. No,
I vehemently disagree that they're similar. Storage is storage is storage. You can get lots of it. It's almost an inverse thing. Storage is not fungible, but you can get a lot of it and pile it together. You don't necessarily need new technology to reach tape out to increase storage. That's just naturally.
Oh yeah, right. I see what you're saying. You're talking about the generations of the mining efficiency and how you can compete. Oh yeah, totally. That's definitely the case. Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, though, I mean, we're kind of at the end of the really extreme steep curve on the processor, on the hash rate, hardware. I think we're basically reaching the same level of hardware sophistication as commercial CPUs now. So it's like we're butting up against the engineering limits now. So it should slow down a bit. But yeah, really different from storage, because you could just add to it. The sort of hard controller speeds and like whatever throughput speeds are move pretty slow as well. The generations are years long, and yeah, that's interesting. Well, and anyways, all of those all the other commodities also require power. That's the thing.
Yeah, they do require power, but why would you want to change it? Proof of work is almost perfect, and I think it is perfect because it is useless, quote unquote, in the external world. I'm
not talking about changing. I'm not talking about changing Bitcoin at all. I'm just talking about possibilities for other commodities, digital commodities, scarce digital commodities. But I'm not speaking about monies, because
he's not talking about digitizing value communication like Bitcoin has done. He's talking about digitizing specific commodities.
Right. So you guys, let's look at a commodity. What is a commodity? Commodity is old money, something that is going to eventually be gone, whether it's gold, silver, Bitcoin, you name it. So
wait, gold doesn't go away. What are you talking about?
A commodity. No, I'm
not
just
all
saying
commodities are consumable. There's two. There's at least
I'm saying it's old money. It's old money. Commodity is going to, you invest in it now because it's going to be worth a lot of money later. It's going to be around it's old. It's been around. It's going to be around for a long time. Bitcoin is going to be around for a long time. Bitcoin is a digital commodity, and I think
pork bellies are commodities. Are those old money?
Pork bellies?
Go bad in a week.
Well, if there's a shortage of them, if you know that there's not going to be enough of it, or if you have to mine it, sure. But what I'm saying is that, okay, so what is commodity? Let's break it down. What is a commodity?
Rohstoff, as Max just told me in German. Commodities are scarce.
Right. Well, they're food scarce eventually. I mean, in a gold rush, it's going to be a commodity one day when it runs out. But we invest in it because we want to keep our investment safe.
I think he's talking about the divorce between the value proposition of a commodity versus the use case proposition of a commodity, where we're going to have value communication like in Bitcoin that will actually disincentivize people from speculating on other commodities. So the commodities will still exist as a commodity, but the value connotation speculation might come away. I think that's the point that he's making.
Well, let's get it. Commodity, you've got redeemable money, like money substitutes, like an online ledger with a Visa, MasterCard, and you've got fiat, quick exchange money, money that you can hold, you can use on a daily basis, that you hold in your hand. Okay, so commodity, you can't actually spend that. I mean, you can get money for it, and you have to use money to get it. But you don't usually say, you don't go into a store and buy something with a bar.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that these commodities would become money, but
not at all.
To help measure the relative demand of them more accurately.
And there's certain commodities that are more digital than others. So like, are we going to commoditize gold anytime soon? That's really difficult, but we can commoditize something that is a virtual asset much more easily than a physical asset. And if we could make a value chain protocol that digitizes the scarcity of a commodity that lends itself to the virtual space, I can see what. That's
why I say computing technology commodities only, because they have to be something that's measurable from within a digital system. But even that is so challenging, as we just discussed, on the engineering, science side, and on the other side.
They say in the chat that they're even breaking into CNBC's live coverage with this, with the news that the Winklevoss twins Bitcoin ETF has been rejected by the SEC. The Securities and Exchange Commission rejected a proposal by Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, founders of the crypto exchange Gemini, for the first ever cryptocurrency ETF. The U.S. financial watchdog has yet to approve a cryptocurrency-based ETF, and in the release Thursday highlights issues with security, market manipulation, and investor protection issues. We've seen the price of Bitcoin drop from 8,300 all the way down to 8,096, currently at 8,143. What do you guys think about the Bitcoin ETF being canceled by the Winklevoss? There's still the CBOE one out there. There's still some other ones out there, but there's always a good reason to say bad things about Bitcoin.
Well, the question is, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. What is an ETF? It's not peer-to-peer and it's not cash. It's some synthetic form of financial instrument that banks, leverage up to the maximum and then trade based on their paper profits. So a ETF is by definition and the antithesis of Bitcoin. And to be honest, I don't really mind that it got rejected. because all that it would have introduced is another centralized bank that would hold a bunch of Bitcoin, and that would be a huge honeypot, but even worse than any exchange like Coinbase or Mt. Gox or anything. So I don't mind it getting rejected. I use Bitcoin. I don't use anything else.
Yeah, that's not why people are bummed that the ETF's rejected. What they want is they want people to be able to take all their pre-tax investment money that's currently in the stock market and to be able to put it into Bitcoin. They saw this as 100,000 new buyers for Bitcoin. It's access to markets. If we don't have access to markets, we're not going to be able to get that money, and the whole thing's not going to blow up and become the next currency, or it'll happen much, much slower. People are looking to make this go faster.
Yeah, people want these on-ramps. They want the 32-lane highway, the North Korean 32-lane highway, to be bringing money with full traffic flow into Bitcoin, and they really want that. But I think that it's also important to temper that emotional desire to get all this on-ramping with making sure that we don't, you know, get a whole bunch of collectivized, centralized risk, and then the risk of, you know, not settling because the exchange is so big that they're doing their own books, and then we have, you know, quote, paper Bitcoin floating around. I think that there's some things that we want to temper as far as risk, but at the other end of it is we do want these on-ramps. So I think there's goods and there's bads with almost anything, and so it's important to consider both sides of the coin with this issue.
Yeah, I think what Blake's it's a very good point, and this is something I say all the time. There's two sides to all issues, and we should look at both. But if you set something in motion and you are the powers that are supposed to be in control, and you have to backpedal, how embarrassing is that? So I think this isn't going to be the first that's going to get shot down. There's going to be a couple more. There might be some big players who try to do this as well, big banks, and are just put on hold until, you know, September or after the regulation is looked at again.
Bitcoin is dead. Oh my God! Everybody sell. It's dead. Oh my God.
Thank you, Gabriel. That was very, very useful to the conversation.
Yeah, but obviously it isn't, you know, and that's the thing. Bitcoin doesn't care. We have lived without ETFs for what, 9 years? We can make it pretty much forever without that.
Honey badger, honey badger, honey badger, go.
I'm pumping my fist. You just can't see it. It's in the dark. But Thomas, I know that you wanted to say something about the price with the drop after this rejection.
I just think it's people are selling. I don't know. What do you want to say? Right here you can see the chart. No, you can't see the chart. So annoying. Let's see. How about right here?
Thomas. Oh, that's actually really amazing. I'm assuming people haven't heard about it yet because that's very little. That's a very small, that's like a Thursday for a Bitcoin. Well, what do you know? It's Thursday.
I remember the first time the ETF got rejected, I made this tweet, and my tweet had this awesome GIF. Do you ever see Superman where he gets shot directly in the eye with the bullet and it bounces off? I was like, visualization of the long-term damage to Bitcoin technology by ETF rejection. It's just Superman getting shot in the eyeball and having no long-term damage. So it might ephemerally cause some corrections, but long-term, the ETF doesn't mean a whole lot in terms of the health of the value transmission protocol and decentralized consensus mechanism that is Bitcoin technology.
I like it. I love that. That visualization is great. Yeah, if you're a maximalist, you just look at this as a hiccup. You're still, I mean, I look at it as an opportunity. I'm a bit scared the price is going to keep going up and up, which is good. But if you're buying in, you know, it makes your dollar or euro cost average a little bit less for your bang for your buck. You know, so I'm looking at this as an opportunity. But yeah, when it drops, it kind of cracks me up. You see the news, and it kind of just tailors to the news, or does it? You know, does it really? Is it just something else that's actually going on that no one knows about?
Yeah, it's funny. Whenever you're getting paid or getting money, if you're dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin, like, come on, dip right before I get some exposure. So it's funny to have people hear you say, why would you want the price to go down? It's like, because I'm accumulating and I want to do it at a good price. That's why sometimes people are doubtful of big institutional investors when they say something really negative about Bitcoin. You're like, are you accumulating on your own news? Are you trying to push the price down so you can get a good deal?
Oh, yeah. And, you know, they are accumulating, and I hope they are not accumulating on custodial ETFs, because then they're not getting their hands on Bitcoin, they're getting their hands on paper. And if the institutional investors want to have Bitcoin, Get the real thing. Come on.
It's going to be great when they get hacked. It's going to be hilarious. They're all going to get hacked. Every single ETF will get hacked. This is my prediction. 2018, July 26th at XDX AM/PM. Every single ETN and ETF custodial fund will get hacked. Every single.
Well, and this wouldn't be the institutional investors, Max. This would be normal people buying the ETF like a stock. Certainly the ETF would buy a large portion of Bitcoin, then they'd hold them. Then the normal people would be able to buy the ETF like a stock. So this is just another big on-ramp to a ton more Bitcoin money that we're not getting from the Winklevi. But remember, the Winklevi approach previously was a bad approach. They were doing everything. They were holding the Bitcoin, they were pricing the Bitcoin, they were running the ETF. If they did that again in their second application, it's no surprise they were not approved. But I would like to see what happens with the CBOE. The CBOE, if they get rejected or not. That's really what we are waiting.
So do we have news about the report of the excuse for rejection, or is it right now just coming through that it has been rejected, but we don't have that full comprehensive report like we did before in terms of pointing out the issues that you just brought up, like they're holding all their coins, the Winkdex is something that's under their control. That makes for some nervous Nellies up at the regulation board. Do we have anything like that coming through just as of yet?
They're saying that Bitcoin is not. They rejected the Winklevi's argument, saying that Bitcoin is not uniquely resistant to manipulation. So they believe that there's manipulation problems in the Bitcoin market. There are significant investor protection issues that need to be examined. So that sounds very general. They're not saying specifically there's a problem with the Winklevi holding the Bitcoin or that there's a problem there. They're just saying that they don't trust this Bitcoin yet. So we are going to see this in the markets. We're down to 80.80. Remember, news like this is going to take a full 24 hours for the entire market to react. We have to find out what time it is in China, see what's going on over there. And everyone has to make their decision whether or not they're going to sell and freak out over this ETF news.
It's over, you guys. Bitcoin was a really cool experiment, but the Bitcoin experiment has ended.
Well, it's interesting. I wonder what they mean by manipulation. I wonder if they mean it's an emerging market and the market cap is not hypermassive and so it's volatile. I mean, because manipulation to me would be like, oh, somebody's making secret, scam Bitcoins and nobody can tell the difference, or somebody's, trading a whole bunch of paper Bitcoin and stuff like that. And I don't necessarily think that that's the case at all. So I wonder what their operating definition of manipulation is in this specific case. That would be very interesting to know, because that word manipulation, in terms of we all understand how Bitcoin is mined and created through digital scarcity. It's not a very manipulable system, but again, it is very volatile. It's an emerging market, and the total market cap of Bitcoin is not so high that it can't have drastic swings up and down. So that would be interesting to get more information on what their definition of manipulation is here.
Yeah, absolutely. Because most of the time, what government calls manipulation is just a free market. If people are on the free market buying and selling their stuff voluntarily, there is no manipulation here whatsoever. So yeah, I don't think that much manipulation is going on. I think manipulation is being introduced by government oftentimes because they will actually manipulate with the market and do that most often through some stupid laws. For example, ETF laws.
I love centralized rules that are like, okay, the market's being manipulated, so we're going to manipulate it to prevent manipulation. It reminds me of the quote in that movie Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, like, is there any risk of brain damage from the procedure? It's like, well, technically the procedure is brain damage. So that's always my go-to example for when people are saying we're going to regulate out the manipulation by manipulating the market to make it less manipulated, and the whole thing just becomes this Inception-esque deeper and deeper spiral.
Yeah, Blake, I think I kind of agree with you. I mean, they're going to try to regulate it to the full extent as they can. When we saw futures go in and do their contracts, Bitcoin went up. People started buying. Yeah, so it didn't get passed on the first with these ETFs. It dropped a little bit. But, I mean, unless you're big money, these ETFs, even if they do get passed, they're only going to affect you on a small amount where you're going to want to buy a little bit more. It's going to urge you more to buy it. It's just letting more people get in on this, and it's going to be a little bit bigger money that's going to be getting in on this. Whereas It's not happened. If it does happen, it's going to popularize it more. I don't think it's going to do anything bad, but good. It's going to change the regulations a lot more, and you're going to see a lot more people getting excited about it. But as of now, I think we should just stay, not doubtful, but you should be hodling, if anything. I mean, this isn't something you should be dropping the ball on, is my opinion, just because something did or did not pass.
Yes, absolutely. And further to that, Thomas, you said that this is more for the private persons, for the small scale investor. And yeah, they can invest in an ETF, but what do they get? A paper, like a paper certificate and nothing else. So that is kind of like getting your Bitcoin, but only having the volatile aspect, which kind of sucks, but not being able to use it. So why would a private person get an ETF just to speculate on it, when they could get the real thing where they also could speculate, but they could use it as a money, which it is?
Yeah, you're holding your private keys, which is nice. You can learn about security and multi-sig and then breaking it up so you don't have one uniform honeypot. It's also one of the most liquid assets ever created by virtue of the fact that the asset is tied to a network that has global reach, and so you can send it to people all over the world. It's an interesting point to say, why would you want a piece of paper that says that you own this versus being able to interact with it and start to learn more about crypto economics? That's a very good point.
The reason they'd want it is because they can use their pre-tax money to buy it. Basically, in America, you can defer part of your income so that you don't pay taxes on it. It goes straight into an investment account, so you have essentially more income. Then if you use your more income to invest into Apple stock or whatever, and it goes up, on the other side, when you take your money out, you pay taxes then on the larger amount that you got because you had a larger amount of principal. So they would do it because of the tax situation.
Hey, Thomas, I got a
which
question
is market
for you.
manipulation, right?
It is what it is. I mean, the market used to promote people buying homes, and we used to give a benefit in the taxes for people that bought homes, and this led to more people buying homes. The market also gives student loans, and this led to the price of college going up. So, there's a lot of things.
Thomas, tell me about this article on Rolling Stone by their most popular writer, Neil Strauss, about Brock Pierce, the hippie king of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin billionaire who's going to buy the island of Puerto Rico. That's what I want to hear about right now.
I didn't catch that it was Neil Strauss. That's very cool. I enjoyed his book, Everyone Loves You When You're Dead, or something like that, collection of essays. But I do have Brock's article right here, as it says in the subtitle, and this is the most buzzwords you can get into any subtitle anywhere. Brock Pierce went from child actor to Bitcoin billionaire. Now he wants to turn Puerto Rico into a Burning Man utopia. And this is a very cool article about our friend Brock Pierce. Met him several times, hung out. Even recently on Twitter, I went out there and asked him for a grant. He didn't exactly say no to a grant for the World Crypto Network. Brock is a little interested, but like it says in the article, Brock's a little interested in everything, basically. But here I was right here. I said, "Dear Brock Pierce, very much enjoyed the new article about you in Rolling Stone. I guess you're a billionaire now. That's super cool. How about giving the World Crypto Network $1 million grant? Thanks, Mad Bitcoins." And Brock said, "Been doing lots of little things. First major announcement coming soon. Let's discuss that." So it sounds like maybe I can get an interview with Brock in the future, and that'd be cool. And I said, "Excited to see your plans. Keep up the good work and take care of yourself. Try to get some sleep." It sounds like Brock's living a pretty tough life as a billionaire. They described in the article that he walks around with a satchel full of various vials and psychedelics, if you will, and that Brock freely samples at any time that he wants and does what he wants. He is a very free individual. He can do what he wants to do, is the main thrust of the article. And what he's trying to do is to remake Puerto Rico in the image of cryptocurrency. And I don't know what that looks like, but they've bought a children's hospital, which is a very large amount of land. They're trying to buy the Masonic Lodge. I've heard rumors they want to buy the airport. The amount of, I mean, I don't know how to quantify it or understand it, or how to like properly understand that I've met someone who's now a billionaire. That's just crazy to me. I don't know how to understand that. And I don't think Brock does either, or anyone. knows how to deal with this extreme wealth. But let's talk some more about that. I also wanted to mention that you could support the World Crypto Network. We accept Bitcoin and all the crazy altcoins that are on Trezor donations. And I want to support my friend DJ Booth, who took one of my ideas and made it into a program. It's called Tallycoin at tallyco.in. And what you do at Tallycoin is you come along and you bring a Bitcoin address with you. And I just happen to have a Bitcoin address right here. And you put the Bitcoin address in. And you say how much you want to raise. So I'm going to switch it to US dollars. I want to raise $1 million. And let's see, we'll do it by next month. But the date wasn't working yesterday. But here we go. We're going to create a tally. All good. Yeah, let's do it. And it says it's tallying up our data. And I'm going to copy and bookmark this for later. And there it is right here. This is our fundraiser for $1 million. No one's donated so far, but it's got a thermometer, which is a big key element to fundraising. This right here is a chart of our donations. So throughout the days of our fundraiser, it'll show whether or not we've received donations. And here's our address, and this just goes to our Trezor wallet. Tallycoin can't control your money. Tallycoin can't take a cut of your money, nothing like that. This is just a Bitcoin address. And this is similar to ProTip, where ProTip couldn't take any of your money. And this is just another software that I've supported and cool idea. And if you want to donate right now, $1 million is 123 Bitcoins right now. Cheap. So shout out Brock.
Brock is a very interesting person. You know, Minnesotans, you know, kind of, you know, are a certain type of person. And it's interesting kind of being from the same neck of the woods, you know, being a fan of Mighty Ducks. The first time that I met Brock was in 2014. I think it was in Washington at the crypto conference about kind of anarchism in crypto. It was a fun conference because it had to do a lot with the philosophy of science. And when I met with him there, I talked a lot about what I was doing in Bitcoin at the time, which was arbitrage and then scripting arbitrage and then making cycles to assist with price discovery and things like that. And I think that he had been working on it before then, but I'm not sure. But he started to come up with the idea of real coin, which then turned into Tether, which has been really useful in terms of being able to straddle and then achieve triangular arbitrage between different areas and really move money cycles. So I'm not sure if I had any influence on him at all in terms of bringing that up or reinforcing it. But the next time that I saw him was in Chicago. And he was there with Craig Sellers, and basically they were going full steam ahead with real coin development. And it's just really, really interesting now that Brock and Tether are two things that the entire world are talking about. And I, you know, had the opportunity to hang out with him and to talk with him directly. It's something that is very, very bizarre when somebody that you've been, you know, in close meet space with, and you've talked to them and you've, you know, looked in their eyes, and then now they are that influential in the world. It's a very, very, very weird feeling. So hopefully everything in Puerto Rico goes well. Hopefully they can acquire the airport and make a utopia where they burn the man every day. And the man will be thoroughly burned.
We're kind of ignoring the elephant in the room here. What's a Puerto Rico cost these days, anyways? What's a guy got to shell out to get a Puerto Rico, huh? I mean, $1 billion is not going to cut it. And buying a freaking children's hospital and a Masonic lodge and maybe a 2-bedroom condo on the beach is not exactly buying Puerto Rico. So what does it cost? I mean, their economy alone is X billion. What's it cost to buy the island off the U.S., right? It's a U.S. territory. It'll be a Brock Pierce territory. So what, 18 million, 80 million? What does an island like that cost? 175 billion?
I assume that he's going to lock down the infrastructure. So like if the U.S. military goes somewhere and they want to take over, they don't go somewhere where there's no infrastructure, because that would take a lot of boots on the ground to have any impact. But when you go someplace where there's already a community or stuff like that, you just take over the infrastructure. There's a central point to take over, and then you kind of do it like that. That's what I would assume that they mean when they say that he's buying Puerto Rico. But, you know, I don't know. I guess they could mean that he's going to buy every single piece of property for sale all of Puerto Rico. But like you said, I don't know if that's going to be really expensive, and I don't like what would the advantages to that be. I'm really not sure. It's a good question.
Well, for Brock, there's clear advantages. If you buy the island, then you're the king of the island, and you got like you basically, you know, you get the people to sign, you know, some sort of constitution or whatever it is, and you know, if you don't please them, then they'll obviously get rid of you and make your life hell. So you got to kind of do a good job, but it's like a smaller, you know, it's a smaller, I mean, it has a better prospects to have a fair society of, you know, a sort of, you know, independent nation of that size. I think you maybe could pull it off.
Yeah, and I mean,
I'm not sure, like Gabe's saying, I'm not sure if you'd want to buy it from the United States. Part of the genius of Puerto Rico is that they're still a U.S. protectorate, and yet they've passed this bizarre tax law that says foreigners don't have to pay taxes for, I don't know, the next 10 years, something like that. It's incredible incentive to move there. And I agree with Blake. I think that they're going to buy the infrastructure, the bars, the restaurants, hotels. And what it sounds like already, just reading the article, is people are just moving there. People are just picking up. They've got their laptop bag and their suitcase, and they get an Airbnb for 2 weeks. And Brock gets them to, you know, start a company and funds them and something else and this and that. And pretty soon you're living this Puerto Rico lifestyle. I'm not entirely against it. It sounds like adventure and excitement. I'm not so sure.
Brock is interesting too, because when you talk to him, you're not sure if he's paying attention, and then you see that, you know, he's absolutely absorbed everything that you said, and he's actively and aggressively going to make money in that same space. And it's he's got this really profound facility for, you know, multitasking, and then also taking in all these good ideas that he's able to then leverage like nobody else that I've ever met. So it's very, very interesting that he's a billionaire. And then you think about, well, if markets are great and markets allocate money to the most competent people, and then you've met him and he's a billionaire now, it's just, it's a really, really interesting thought concept if you're an anarcho-capitalist and you think about it really hard.
Yeah,
and talking about a couple of things.
Talking about anarcho-capitalism, you know, America is in big trouble, absolutely. And secession is one way that they could fix it. You know, the states could somehow split off from the federal government and do their own thing, and so could all the possessions would be upon others, Puerto Rico. So if Brooke actually goes out there and then puts down a, you know, big portion of the money and says to the President Trump, like, hey, you need money, I got some, you got this piece of land, you don't really need it, right? It's destroyed by a hurricane anyhow, you need to do a lot of investing to bring it back up. Let me support you here. So why not? And that might set a good precedence of decentralization and you know, secession for the states from the federal government, which I'm all for.
The interesting thing is if Brock and them go down there and they build this infrastructure and they start starting banks and starting businesses and corporations, and then they actually buy up the whole island, it starts to look like Cuba during Godfather 2, where the mob is really running things. And, you know, maybe it's good. Cuba looked like it was bustling in the mafia period. They had the good cars. The sugar factory was running good. It all seemed all right. And another thing they talked about in the article is that Brock is moving so quickly and doing so many deals that they actually talked about it as DPM, deals per minute. And just that he's talking to this guy, he's talking to that guy, and this guy just came in on the plane, and he's willing to work with that guy, and he just... that's what I think Brock's value is that he's a connector. And a lot of people don't know how to value a person that's a connector. But one of the other things they said in the article is that they didn't think that cryptocurrency would have gotten so far if it wasn't for Brock behind the scenes talking to this investor and that investor. And maybe at that time he wasn't a billionaire yet, but he was able to influence all of these millionaires who got into crypto, who started this project and that project, and helped make crypto into what it is today. So it was a really interesting article, part of a series. I would definitely suggest the New York Times article from a couple of months ago, Crypto Rica, something like that. Very interesting stuff going on down there.
Yeah, if I might weigh in, there's a couple of things. I know that, well, being from South America, I know that the infrastructure is what you want to go for when you go to third world countries, any place that's the economy is not doing so well. I have friends who visit Puerto Rico quite often because it's very cheap to you can live like a king for nothing. And Thomas is right; they give massive incentives. I actually thought about moving to Puerto Rico myself instead of before I moved here, France. But So Puerto Rico has their own internal affairs. They've got their own government, but the United States controls the trade, the foreign relations, and the commerce. So Barack wouldn't actually be buying it from Puerto Rico. He'd be more sanctioning it through the American government. And I do think if he is going to go in there and reset up the infrastructure and the economy, he is making quick loans or quick deals, and you have to. That's how that's how it is in South America. They make quick changes, and everybody just has to deal with it. And I hope it's for the good. The idea of Burning Man every day in Puerto Rico sounds about right. But hey, you know, if he does good, that's great. It just shows that, you know, cryptocurrency has massive can do some big changes, you know.
I'm not sure about every day. That sounds pretty hot. Burning Man every day. But it is a very interesting project he's got going on down there.
It's interesting, the topic of secession and the topic of trying to get the federal government to have less influence and to have the states have more influence, to decentralize the governance structures of America, to make it so that there's less people making decisions that affect your life far away from home. I think that this is why a lot of people take issue with global warming and with the tax credit system. It's not necessarily scientific, but it's more economic. If we have a jurisdiction that's global that controls tax credits really, really far away from home, if somebody goes and takes, you know, control of that through bribes or through threats, then you have somebody that has jurisdiction over the entire world, and then they can do things that, you know, might not be great for you. So I think that the general rule of thumb here is the closer to home you are in terms of people that are making rules or voting in your town and in your community, it's a lot easier to affect change there than it is to have the federal government making all these sweeping mandates and regulations and having, you know, civil asset forfeiture in record numbers, especially if you're crossing state lines and things like that. So it's interesting to look at all the different ways that we can try to dial back that control, whether it be the idea of secession or more power to state governments and less power to federal governments, less power to the UN, more power to the US. Just any time that we can try to rein that control back closer and closer to home, I think that that's generally a good idea and a good thought experiment in terms of how do we do that? How do we decentralize these centers of authority to make sure that they're more individualistic, more considerate, more bohemian, more libertarian, more classically liberal?
Yeah, I think that's great. I just wanted to say one more thing before we switch topics about this. You know, if Barack buys this island, he might be the first in some new fad to buy islands, you know, with cryptocurrency. This could be something big. So I hope he does what he does for the good of this, and he's not just tripping balls on something weird. But good on him for taking the responsibility. It's a big deal. So I don't think he's buying it from the Puerto Rican government. I think he's sanctioning it through American controls. But that's just my opinion. So we'll see what happens, I guess.
I want to agree with Rico on this. I don't think this will be the only island bought by a cryptocurrency pioneer, and that we might see multiple competing Bitcoin island projects in the future. So people should start recruiting us soon. They should get mad Bitcoins in the World Crypto Network. Our fundraiser for $1 million has not raised anything so far. It's actually gotten further away as the price of Bitcoin went down or up or something. It used to be 123. Now we need to raise 124. So we are very far away from that. We'd also like to ask you to donate to Max's project. He's trying to hand out some Bitcoin. They want to give out dollars, and he only wants $240. So if you'd like to donate to Max's $240 fundraiser, you might ignore our $1 million fundraiser for right now. But we are still waiting. You know, if you're a Bitcoin billionaire, you're sitting out there and you're like, I think it would be funny to give those World Crypto Network guys $1 million. That's my idea of humor. That's the kind of jokes that I go for. And I've seen the movie Brewster's Millions. We are ready to go. So send that Bitcoin our way. I think Max is ready to move on for the second topic. Go ahead, Max. Third topic.
Well, you know, we do have Bitcoin billionaires, and we want to get the World Crypto Network on the list of Bitcoin millionaires. But guess who also joined the millionaire list? The Lightning Network. Yay! Why? Because we have $1 million in capacity on the Lightning Network, and we reached that landmark today. Isn't that amazing how the Lightning Network just keeps on growing and growing and growing and growing at such a mind-blowing speed It is incredible. It is really, really incredible. We started out with nothing. I celebrated the one Bitcoin, the one Bitcoin capacity 2-3 months ago, and now we already hit. How many Bitcoin is that? Many, definitely many.
124.
Wow, isn't that crazy? And of course, the more capacity we have on Lightning, the more useful it becomes. The more transactions you can make, the more routing paths you have, and the higher amount of Bitcoin you can actually use in the Lightning Network. That is fantastic.
I think it's a great bottom-up solution, and I think that looking for bottom-up solutions that mimic what we should be doing in terms of our governance structures are great ways to expand the circle of trustlessness, which is what you want to do. Tenable development to Bitcoin generally looks like expanding the circle of trustlessness, and that certainly is what Lightning is doing. I think there was a Bcash supporter that put a lot of money into a single Lightning node, and then he wrote an article saying most of the Lightning capacity is centralized under one node. And it was funny because one of the more erudite Bitcoiners pointed out, well, I think that the real takeaway from this isn't just that somebody set up a really, really large Lightning node. The takeaway from this is that somebody that purports to support Bcash only has hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of Bitcoin still that they're holding, that they're able to do this. And that doesn't seem like somebody that is saying that we should go all in on Bcash being intellectually honest. So I thought that that was a really, really funny story.
Somebody's got to jump on it. Max, where are you?
I am right here. I thought one of you guys is going to take it, but if it's just like
you're the host today, it's all you.
Well, you know, the beautiful thing about Lightning Network is that provides so many more and amazing possibilities. You know, we talked about streaming money for forever now here in Bitcoin because we knew it was going to be possible eventually. You know, it took some time to get there, but just with the internet, we're you know, I wasn't active back there, but I know you hear the stories that everyone was talking about. Oh yeah, we're gonna stream like videos, we're gonna stream music and everything, but it still took like a day just to propagate an email. And you know, the early adopters, they knew that it was going to happen. They could feel it. They could see the potential. But well, guess what? It just takes time and it takes hard work. But good luck that we have a bunch of cypherpunks working on this, because cypherpunks do write code, and that's all they do. And eventually, if enough code is written, well, you are going to stream videos. You're going to do a live call on several different countries at the same time right now and streaming it all over the world for no costs whatsoever. That is fantastic. You know, this I imagine was even almost impossible to imagine back in the days. But it is possible today. And same is going to happen with Lightning. And same is going to happen with streaming money. This is just the beginning. Hold on and buckle up. We are going way, way up to the moon. I don't mean by price. I mean by technology.
I used to chat with text. We'd call into a BBS. This BBS had 8 lines. That means that whoever ran this BBS or bulletin board system had 8 different modems and 8 different phone lines. Because they had 8 different phone lines, 8 of us could call in at the same time, and we could have a chat of 8 people, mostly in our local area. And that was the height of internet. That was it.
So that was when the Bitcoin talk show started?
That's when we started having group talk shows. Yes, you could type and you could say CYA, like CWCYA, and you could say later like L8R. And this was the way you typed on the internet. And actually taught me to type a lot. I was taking a typing class actually back then, and they were teaching me on an electric typewriter. And I would go home at night and I would chat with all my friends on the BBS, and I had to be able to type faster to talk to them. And then we went on to ICQ and the internet and all those things. But IRC, they're saying in the chat. Yeah, just like IRC. And now we have video, and now we can have TV shows even. And I want to offer to you guys at home, you could even call in. And this has been working all day. We're ready to take your calls on Skype at World Crypto Network, but you just need to call in. That's the part that you're not doing. So we'll see. Max, do we have any live viewers? How many are we getting thumbs up and shares? Are people going to call?
Well, let's for sure hope that they're going to call, because this is the only chance to call in right now. You're going to have another chance later, but if you want to call in right now, now is the time. And you know, that is the beautiful thing with having such a setup as this here. And you know, sneak peek to the future, we want to expand the call-in show much more. Why? Because we all believe that calling and asking questions is just the way to learn. Because yes, we can give you all the information on a general overview, but we do not know what you are interested in. Sorry, we cannot mind read. And so what we are trying to do is to get you to tell us what we should talk about. Isn't that nice? Because that way we have something to talk about, but you have something to listen to. So it's a win-win situation for everyone. So if you have a question, yeah, you could put it in the chat, but that's kind of boring, right? You could just come on and talk to us, just like humans do. Or are you a dog?
People in the chat, they say, what's happening with Ethereum? Why is the price going down? My obvious answer would be competition, right? It seems like platform coins are the coin of the year. We've done this thing before with the privacy coins, Monero, Dash, Zcash. These were the hot new thing. Well, I think the hot new thing next year is these platform coins. So Ethereum's the granddaddy of the platform coins. Everybody's interested in the new EOS, Stellar, whatever else. I think some people consider Bitcoin forks or Bitcoin dividends to be making Bitcoin into a platform. So now Bitcoin could compete with these platform coins. But it really seems this is the new idea. You can have an ICO on your platform. So that's what I'm looking for.
I just got a message on my LinkedIn. Somebody was like, we're launching an Ethereum competitor in China. And all I could think of was Silicon Valley, where Jin Yang is like, we're going to make a new internet. And then what does Richard tell him? He's like, you can't just make throw new in front of it and have a new product. And he's like, but you are making new internet. I thought that was a really funny response. Obviously, the protocol versus a company, but it was still a hot fire response. And these Ethereum competitors, I think, are very much, you know, we're going to make a new world computer, and it's like that's technically very complicated, and it seems like they're having a lot of trouble doing that, even on the original one with all the development support. So, you know, good luck with that.
I think it really is that way, Blake. They all see the success of Ethereum, and it used to be people wanted to be the next Bitcoin or the new Bitcoin, but it's starting to be now people want to be the new Ethereum. They want to be the next Ethereum.
Yeah, but that is good, right? We want to have competition, and that is amazing. Because, you know, if we have competition, then there are several different options to choose from. And if the options are bad, well, you do not have to use them. But if there are several bad options, but one good option, use the good option. That's how I see Bitcoin. There are, what, 1,500, 2,000 currencies that are somewhat available. You could use any of them. I think most of them are shit. So, well, I'm just going to use the one that is not, in my opinion. And that is Bitcoin.
I think that's the problem. It's like they've built a worse mousetrap, and now they're trying to make a copy of the worst mousetrap. And it's like an idiocracy. We keep making a copy of a copy of a copy, and we keep losing fidelity because it's an analog copier. It's not digital. It's not perfect. So.
Like a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox, when you would go to school and they wouldn't know how to use the copying machine, and instead of using the original every time, they would use a copy of a copy. So by the time you were in like last hour getting a handout, you'd be like, how come half of it's all black with toner and the other side has the contrast all messed up? I think that's a very good example. Analog copy of a copy of a copy doesn't work so hot.
Well, that's the one we should put on the refrigerator. We should get all the magnets. That's the winner.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Rika.
I was just going to say something really quick about Lightning. I just feel like it's modernizing the Bitcoin, so that way it can be used on the daily use. So that way you don't have to just store it and hold it and pay a lot of fees to exchange it or have to wait forever. It's really nice, and it's the way that it's created, so that way it can be checked on both ledgers. The one that's the core and the Lightning is kind of nice. But I think that what Lightning is trying to do is it's just trying to make Bitcoin a daily use application or a cryptocurrency. And anybody who's tried to use it before understands when you're buying it or selling it, especially when it's in high demand, it's very hard. But with Lightning, it's really quite nice. It's well, it's obviously it's much faster, but you're getting to use Bitcoin at its best, you know. And I think with adoption, it's going to become a lot easier. But I'm kind of curious as what's going to happen once if ETFs go through and everybody starts using it on a natural basis, and people in markets are using it. And Lightning is going to be the only way to go, you know. So I just see it as the next step, you know, and it's going to maybe just go full force. It's kind of odd to me that like Coinbase and some other changes aren't using Lightning Network nodes. That really frustrates me. But you know, you can't force the people who are selling it to use a specific one. But it just really blows my mind, honestly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, the big companies, of course, Coinbase is going to miss out. They're such a bad actor. And they'll just continue doing that, but we have to use something else. So for example, use the great wallet by Jack Mallers, the Zap Lightning wallet. They have an iOS alpha release already. Please, come on, don't do iOS first. Do some halfway open stuff. Do the Android first. But the app looks amazing. What is even better, in my opinion, is that they have partnered up with BTC Pay Server. Yes, the free and open source version of BitPay. BitPay, just like Coinbase, kind of a bad actor, don't really use them. But hey, now that we have Lightning integration into the open source merchant payment system, that's amazing. They also have integrated a Zap point of sale system. So now if you're at a coffee, you know, you can make little pictures in your wallet and you know, click on them on how much they actually cost. It will automatically generate the invoice that will then be displayed in the QR code, so that your customers can easily see what they've bought and pay for exactly what they did buy. They also do now, because of the BTC Pay Server integration, have Bitcoin to fiat conversion. So while you can now have instant, really instant, Lightning to fiat conversions with the BTC Pay Server. That is just amazing. So the Lightning Network is just keeps on chugging.
Yeah, the BTC Pay Server is great. Sorry, go ahead.
iOS may be closed source, but it is the largest market. That makes sense. We are seeing the price of Bitcoin continue to fall. It is now $7,915, most likely continuing to fall because of the Winklevoss ETF rejection news. This is only one of the 3 ETFs. There are other ETFs, but everyone is dumping like this is the only one. And this may be a sign that the SEC won't approve the other ETFs as well. We don't know.
Yeah, well, with those general reasons that they gave, I think it's a pretty good bet to say that they're going to reject the other ones, because how are these generalistic reasons going to be tackled by the you know what I mean? It's not like, oh, okay, you are pointing to your own price ticker, so that's something that could be changed by the other ones that are applying. That might be an excuse that would lead us to believe, okay, maybe the other ones have a shot, but it's saying that the price is manipulated. How are other people going to respond to that? But it also just occurred to me that they might be saying that the price is manipulable because certain central agencies are in charge of reporting the price. You know, who knows what their reasoning is? Again, it would be nice to have their definition of manipulation at hand.
Yeah, the only difference would be is that we expect the CBOE proposal to be a better proposal. The Winklevoss proposal has gone through 2 or 3 times already. It's been rejected. It's been slowed down. They've come back over and over again. Maybe this is their last proposal from the Winklevoss. But the CBOE, the Chicago Board of Exchange, we're expecting more from them. However, this could be the end of Bitcoin ETFs for a while.
Well, and again, it's not Bitcoin, right? Yeah, it would be nice to have them, but it's not necessary. I'm much more excited about all the stuff that is going on Lightning and all the other technical developments that we have. This will bring Bitcoin so much further than some boring company, trying to get their institutional money into Bitcoin. If they want to do that, they can use Bitcoin just as is. And what is holding them back is government regulation. And that is something that Andreas Antonopoulos talked about forever, to say that if you build up all those regulations, you might think that you will keep bad actors out. But actually what happens, that as soon as there's a better alternative, you do not keep others out, but you lock yourself in. And that is exactly what is happening with all those regulations right now, that the government thought they could protect themselves and they could protect their monopoly. Well, turns out, no, they really can't. They actually have locked themselves in, and all the good stuff is happening on Bitcoin, and they're just sitting outside there and wish that they could join us. But, well, they can't.
We do have breaking news from the Bitcoin fundraiser right now. We've received our first donation of 0.00189 Bitcoin. We now have $15.02 towards our goal of $1 million. As you can see, we are 0.0% towards our goal. Thank you for your support. It hasn't really moved the needle, but remember, you could donate right now. You could give the World Crypto Network an entire $1 million. You're probably holding that in your side wallet right there on your phone, ready to go. Crypto Daddy's claiming credit for donating the $15 and breaking the zero of the fundraiser right here as the goal's back up to 125 Bitcoins. When we started, it was only 123 Bitcoins. So we're actually moving backwards.
we appreciate it. I mean, that reminds me of one of the best things I ever saw was Stefan Molyneux was wanting people to donate to his thing, and a donation for $2 came in, and he lost his mind, and he was like, "If you're gonna donate $2, just don't even bother." And like everybody that was watching was just like, "That's not a good look, man. Like, don't say that. What if that was all the money that somebody had to donate?" And it was funny because he just ranted for the rest of the episode about don't donate $2. But we don't feel like that round here. If you only have the transaction fee plus 1 Satoshi, go ahead and send it our way, and we'll happily have it.
And you might be saying to yourself, "I only have $100 million. I need to save some of that $1 million for rent and other expenses." Whereas other people who don't have $100 million, you might be better off paying your rent than donating to the World Crypto Network. But this is coming off of the other Tallycoin success that we've had. Looks like a success that's been wiped out by the decline of the Bitcoin price. But we did raise our goal of $100 on Tallycoin, which means that I ordered a Smith Corona Silent Writer typewriter off of eBay, as suggested by Tom Hanks in the documentary California Typewriter. It's supposed to have the perfect typewriter sound. And as you can see, it's got a carriage return right here. You have to pick up that big metal thing and shove it back over every time you write a sentence. I know, millennials, imagine it. They found a way to make writing harder. If only they could make reading harder too. It would be perfect for your generation. But yeah, we're super excited about Tallycoin. Thanks for your donation. Thanks to the power of Bitcoin, we're seeing the pennies move up and down here. Because we are now $15-aires. We are on the high level there.
Yeah, but Thomas, with that typewriter, how do you make the emojis?
It doesn't have any emoji keys. People are saying in the chat, I was wondering before how you make the number 1, right? Because they didn't put a 1 key on there. And they're saying that L will double for a number 1. But look at this laziness right here. No number 1. I don't even think there's an exclamation mark. How can I say things loudly? I don't think there's a caps lock key, tabs on the wrong side. There's a lot of strange things to learn about these typewriters. And I'm definitely going to be showing everyone on the show all about typewriters. And they're saying, why would you want that? And I think it's so funny because I know this guy from the chat that he's a diesel mechanic and he can actually fix cars and stuff, which I can't do. When I look at this, I just see a mechanical marvel. I see that like somehow I'm going to push that key, and the energy from me pushing that key is going to do a Rube Goldbergian to me, a bizarro string of metal to metal. And I read the typewriter book. I read about all the different designs that they went through before they came to this one, and how they passed it up, and how these keys, they kind of jump up at the thing and then they slide back into position. Like they have the energy to come out of their slot, but then they go back into their slot. I just think it's super amazing, and they're kind of super crazy retro now. No one wants them. No one uses them for anything. And then there was this girl in the video that said that the typewriter helps her write the poems, and that the typewriter is part of the poetry writing process.
Well, you got a hashtag in there. You can write out all your hashtag ideas with the 3 there. You can be like hashtag me too, or whichever hashtag you're
right. It is right hashtag now. Ready. This is an advanced keyboard. Also capital letters. You can type typewriter with the top row only. So as long as the top row is working. Somebody in the chat gets it. He says it's beautiful. Also, look at that box. Do you see the checkered nature of this box? The box is coming too. So I don't know. I think it's super fun. Unfortunately, I watched that documentary, and I went from owning one perfectly good electric typewriter that's at home to owning 2 manuals and another electric typewriter, all of which are being shipped here by eBay. And these all weigh about 25 pounds a piece. Half the funds I spent on this were in shipping costs. But we'll see. I hope they arrive in good shape and workable. And I'll let you guys know. Hopefully we'll be typing soon. So thanks for your support.
Yeah, but isn't that nice that back then the people really got excited about the springs of the typewriter, right? And that's all that they got excited about because that was so mind-blowing to them. And now we're talking about magic internet money that you can stream by the second without any fees. And we're like, yeah, that's kind of cool.
The things they're talking about in their advertisements are things like you can have a legible report, or you can have an invoice or a receipt that you could actually read because it's not written in the doctor's handwriting, and these kind of things that and a bunch of the typewriters were circle or index typewriters where you move the little clicker around and you push down on it. You know, you've seen them for like kids' toys or those little things that make stickers. That was a typewriter then. You would spend lots of money back then to get that mechanical marvel that like clips around, push down. And they sold it on like people being able to type faster. But you know, no one could type. So no one could type faster. No, this machine didn't make anyone faster for a long time. People are talking about the price in the chat. They might have not heard the news that the Winklevoss ETF was rejected. So right now we had a Bitcoin negative market move because of that. But looking at least the short-term chart, we appear to have found a bottom at 7,915. The price of Bitcoin right now is 7,999. We've printed a skyscraper with a big top on there. So that's probably not so good for going up further. But we'll just have to see how that goes. Remember, it's going to take at least 24 hours for the entire market to react to the Winklevoss ETF rejection news.
It'd be good for DCA dip so that you can accumulate some cheap Bitcoin. Bitcoin's on sale. That's the takeaway here. Is Bitcoin is on sale.
Well, it's not much of a sale, right? It's like 3%, which is nice to have. Yeah, absolutely. But you know, dollar cost average all the way. But buy a bit more now. You know, if you're in for the short-term stuff, absolutely.
It does seem like this is news-based price action. Some people were saying in the chat that their TA and technical analysis told them this was going to happen. I'm not so sure about that. And it does look already like somebody is buying this Bitcoin back. We're not seeing as much volume as we saw in this big red sell here, but somebody is slowly acquiring this Bitcoin. And if we were to see some large volume numbers here, it just shows that somebody out there is going against this news. So you got to imagine if you're some kind of millionaire or billionaire sitting on the side of this market and you hear suddenly this bad news that there's not going to be an ETF, I'll bet you run to your computer and start buying that Bitcoin. So.
Well, yeah, I went ahead and went to a pure cash position at about 82, 87, and then I just went and bought up everything below 8K while I tapped out really quick. So.
Yeah,
I'm just getting wrecked.
Yeah. Not really, but that would be really funny.
Well, we do have something in the chat which is quite funny, quite interesting, let's put it that way. A. Markovitz is saying that we should talk about the Stockholm Syndrome, because people are using fiat currencies in their daily slave lives, and they love their captors. And that's actually a quite good way to put it, because, well, you know, fiat money by definition is stealing from you all the time, and you know, so is the government. That many people do like that. And I see that especially in countries like Finland or in Germany, where it's crazy how much the people like the government. And you know, if you go back and you read you know, more of the old revolutionaries, you know, the freedom fighters in the Americas, or the pirates and you know, the fighting the crown, or well, the slaves in the Civil War, or Martin Luther King with the civil rights. They were all like. No, we should actually, you know, work together in small groups, you know, decentralize, be on the individual, and you know, take care of ourselves. But so many people today, I think partially because of the fiat money, they do really like being taken care of. So that's.
I was going to ask you. I think that we're both pretty firmly in the Austrian camp. Have you ever heard of Samuel Edward Konkin III and the concept of agorism?
I am a huge proponent of agorism, and that is what I see as Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the perfect agorist currency, because well, agorism it comes from the Greek word agora, which means just a marketplace. It's not just a marketplace for buying and selling goods, but also the marketplace of ideas, the marketplace of helping other people, of sharing in the community and supporting each other, just living a decent life, basically. And Bitcoin is, of course, all of that. You know, we do have, of course, Bitcoin for selling goods and services. Yeah, we do that all the day, all the time, hopefully. But we also support each other, right? We donate to the World Crypto Network. Link in the description below. we donate until we have the $1 million. You know, we also share our ideas, right? Bitcoin is open source. It's a sharing and loving community. I haven't met too many people in the Bitcoin space that were not that nice and were not that open. So I do think that Bitcoin is a great way to practice agorism.
Oh, definitely. And in the open source software movement, I mean, Tom and I are really big into that. And open source software, I mean, there's this really, really great video. It's this RSA drawing video about a study that was done at MIT about what motivates us. And it turns out that it's not necessarily just financial reward that motivates us, but it's autonomy, purpose, and mastery. If you can have autonomy, purpose, and mastery, which is a really good way of describing the things that we are getting out of things like Apache or, you know, Bitcoin development, and then also the deflationary nature of Bitcoin. This is almost a perfect storm to incentivize people to do things. So you can look at the monetary incentive of Bitcoin. It's deflationary. It encourages savings, some more responsible things than, you know, inflationary velocity money Keynesianism things have been encouraging. But it's also encouraging people in ways that are like biologically fundamental. It's encouraging in terms of you are contributing something to a network, which will be like a bowl that retains and stores the value that you put into it, instead of having the people that are, you know, closest to authority and leech-like being able to siphon off value, and then the people that are poorest are hurt by inflation the most. Not a lot of people that I would talk to, if they fully understood that concept, would be really, you know, motivated to contribute to something like that. So I think it's important to have a balance of understanding agorism and contributing for the right reasons, but also you don't want to be holding Bitcoin on an ephemeral short horizon. If you have your savings heavily into Bitcoin and you know that something is going to come up soon where you need the money out, if it gets to a comfortable point, you want to take profits and not wait until the week or day before if there's a big dip and then get, you know, more or less wrecked versus what you know, wanted to do. Even if your time horizon is, you know, 24 months or really, really long, you want to make sure that you get out at a point where you're comfortable. Don't get greedy. Don't get emotional. Try to be really, really pragmatic in terms of, yes, we're supporting agorism by having our savings long-term in something that's decentralized, but also we're not, you know, harming ourselves or our family or our financial stability by playing with short horizons, whether it be buying Bitcoin when you only have a week to have the money, or whether it be not selling until the day that you're going to need the money, and then unfortunately having to do it when there's some type of downtrend. Fortunately, right now we're not having really visceral downtrends, but if somebody was, you know, not selling anything at 18,000 and then they had to sell at 6,000, that's, you know, that's an unfortunate situation where if you were not playing with short horizons, you would have been able to balance that out a little bit better. It's not easy to catch a knife, and so in any, you know, volatile market, you want to make sure that your horizons are long, even in terms of if you're already holding and you know that a bill is coming up. Please be responsible and make sure that you and your family have a, you know, comfortable amount of latitude to get the things done that you know that you're going to need to do.
Well said, Blake. And I would agree that another reason that people don't care about sound money is a lack of education. They really don't know how inflation influences their lives and how it's silently stealing from them. The other reason is that in the United States, we just don't have hyperinflation. The prices really don't go up and down. People are not familiar with this. They don't need to know, so they can go on with their lives without knowing how banks make money or how mortgages are really done or any of these things. So it's just a lack of education and, again, a relative peace for the last, I'd say, 60, almost 70 years now since World War II, we haven't had a major worldwide conflict where everybody has to stop everything. And I don't think we have any concept of what that's like. When Pearl Harbor broke out, when Britain was bombed, it affected your life. You couldn't just say, I don't care about the Nazis. I don't care about the war anymore. It came to you. Right now, we're in an incredible place where a friend of mine related this to me through modern art. His friend, who's a modern artist, said, I can afford to make my art and, you know, make it not look like anything and make it do whatever and be very esoteric because of this piece. If there wasn't this incredible piece, we wouldn't be able to have this esoteric art. And that's really where we are. We're in an incredible period of peace, maybe coming to an end. And then we were in the decline of a civilization. And now we've probably tipped over that edge. And now we're in the decline. So it's good. People are going to start caring about their money. They're going to start caring about inflation, and they're going to be looking for these off ramps, these exits like Bitcoin, where you can get out of the old economy and into something risky, but at least it's new. It has a chance to do something different. It's not going to do the same thing.
Oh yes, absolutely. And you know, there's a famous quote by Henry Ford that he said pretty much after the Federal Reserve in America got created, which is, it is well enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system. For if they did, I believe there would be a revolution by tomorrow morning. And he was spot on there, because you know, the system of the Fed is so utterly wrong, just wrong on every level, that it's almost like infallible that they made it last so long. Over 100 years, this is crazy. Like, this sounds like crazy talk, having to create more, to go more into depth than there's actually money being created, to give a few people the power to print as much money as they want, put it in their own pocket and into the pockets of their friends, and stealing from everyone on every level. It's crazy. It's absurd. And I do think that the people will wake up. The funny thing is, they don't even have to really understand it. They just see that, well, we have this Bitcoin thing now, and it's kind of cool, and it's super useful as a money. And they might not even get the economic aspects of it and the moral aspects of it. Of course, it will help them on their way to understanding why this is such a great currency, but it's not necessary. You know, you can like Bitcoin just because it gives you fast and cheap transactions, and it looks nice, and you know, money on your phone. What else? What else would you need? But absolutely. If the people really understood the system, it would be war.
And I love to talk about Henry Ford because he was such an influential figure. There's a motivational speaker, Eric Thomas. He's from Detroit, and he talks about what happened in Detroit and what happened with Henry Ford in the auto industry, and that Henry Ford's dream was so valuable and so massive that it sustained so many people that it actually became this risky form of centralization of creativity, where other people forgot that they have to dream too, where other people forgot about the existentialist, individualist like requirement for you to dream, for you to have your own creative centers. And that centralist force became so huge that it almost was one of the factors that brought the great Motor City down. So I think that, you know, what we can draw from that as a parallel is Bitcoin is great, money is great, sound money is amazing, but also life is meant to be lived. The purpose of life is to be alive. You know, spend time with your family, spend time being creative, spend time doing things that might not necessarily be economically viable, as long as they sustain you and they make you happy, and then you can, you know, have kids and do things that are valuable. I think that one of the great risks of the age of information is that there's so much great stuff coming into our attention that I think that a lot of great people, a lot of great minds will become so distracted that that they don't fulfill the so-called biological duty. The biological duty is to reproduce. It's to have children. And what you want to do is make sure that you don't just spend your time trying to achieve memes beyond yourself, but that you have a family where you can teach your children your values and make sure that they instill them. Because as much as much outreach work as we do trying to convince people of, you know, what's right and what's wrong and stuff like that, the people that are going to listen to you the most are going to be your children. So I think that it's an extremely important part of life to go out, to have friends, to have a social life, to meet people, and to eventually, you know, reproduce with the right person. Don't just go out and, you know, Genghis Khan and spread your genes at all costs, but, you know, you definitely want to try to have a balance between, you know, learning and making sure that you don't fall into a trap of, you know, being a wage slave, and you know, invest and make sure that you have savings, but also, you know, do fun things, meet fun people, and you know, have kids, because it's not as much work, and it's not as much of a pain in the neck as people make it out to be. Children are wonderful to be around, especially if you raise them appropriately in the attachment parenting style, and don't use violence, and you talk to them and you teach them things. Your children are great. They're a reflection of you and how they're raised, and it's really a fun and rewarding thing that I don't think people talk about a lot, because it's become so trendy to talk about how much of a pain in the butt kids are and how much money you can make not having kids, which, you know, are maybe true things, but I think they should be tempered by the other side of, you know, people occasionally saying kids are really great, and they can sustain you through tough things in your life, because, you know, they're just so unapologetically happy and full of life and vibrance, and they're a great source of joy for me.
Blake, trying to prevent idiocracy, one kid at a time. If you guys haven't seen Idiocracy, it's a documentary about our future by the great filmmaker Mike Judge, who wrote Beavis and Butthead and Silicon Valley. And it tells the story of how in the future, smart people stopped breeding and dumb people overbred. And this led to a very unfortunate society. But we also want to talk about this story they mentioned in the chat. I did hear about this morning, but it's our first chance getting a chance to talk about it. Venezuela to remove 5 zeros from ailing currency. And that's right, Venezuela is removing 5 zeros from the bolivar rather than the 3 zeros originally planned. That's an incredible difference, 5 zeros to 3 zeros. And they're trying to keep up with an inflation projected to reach 1,000,000% this year. So if you're keeping score of this $100 banknote that he's holding right there, there should be 5 more zeros on that. That should be $1 million banknote. This is really unbelievable. The inflation in Venezuela is so bad. I mean, I don't know how they're going to get out of this. Obviously, this is going to ignite a fury right here in the chat, because Max is going to go Austrian, and he's going to say that they should do nothing and that they should just sink. I don't know. I might have to go Keynesian. Can they print their way out of this? Can they borrow their way out of this? What can Venezuela do to get out of this mess? Go ahead, Max. Tell them there is no hope.
No, there is hope. But hell yeah, I'm gonna go full blown Austrian here. Absolutely. I have here with me a book called When Money Dies: The Nightmare of Deficit Spending, Devaluation, and Hyperinflation in Weimar Germany. Guess what we have all over the world? Deficit spending, devaluation, and hyperinflation. So, you know, what we had back here in Weimar Germany, where they literally, you know, shoved down pieces of paper down the drain because it wasn't worth anything. That is going to happen not just in Venezuela, but all over the place. Why? It's logical. It just is. If you print money endlessly, and you shove it in your own pockets, well, guess what? The money that you print is no longer useful. And, you know, there are a couple different types of goods in the economy. There are consumption goods. If you have a consumption good, let's say an apple, and you consume it, you're happy. So if you have more than one apple, then you can consume more stuff, which will make you more happy. Marginally less so, but it will make you more happy. Same with production goods. You know, if you have 1 ton of steel, you can build, you know, a small house. I don't really need that much steel for a house, but it doesn't matter. Then if you have 10 tons of steel, then you can build 10 houses. You know, so you are, again, with production goods, you are marginally better off with additional goods. Now, how is it with the money? Well, that's not how money works, because you do not consume money. You do not use money in production. You use money as a medium of exchange. It just exists, and it's there forever. The gold that we mined out of the earth 1,000 years ago is still here. It didn't change. It didn't go away. It didn't increase prosperity a bit. It's just, you know, a useless, quote unquote, thing that if you have more of it, doesn't really change that much. So it's funny that, again, you know, this is such a Keynesian view that the Venezuelan government is doing right now. Just cutting off a few zeros on a piece of paper. Do you really think that this is going to help the economy? Are you that, I'm sorry, but are you that stupid? You think that just, going with a Tipp-Ex and whiting out the currency on a piece of paper, that this is going to bring prosperity to your country? But that's a joke. Come on.
Well, and they have so many goofy things, like we're going to make it so that there's a ceiling on the price of food in the grocery store so they can't charge too much. And then the shelves are all empty the next day. And it's like, that seems like a really short-sighted idea. That's not a good idea. And you hear these heartbreaking stories of the hyperinflation in Germany, where they had hyperinflation and they would try to bring a wheelbarrow full of banknotes to go buy a loaf of bread, and they would come out and the bread would be blowing across the street because somebody dumped it out and stole the wheelbarrow, and they could run away faster and get away with the crime better without that heavy, useless money inside of the wheelbarrow. And it's just like that's insane that things can get to that point, but it's a very real risk if you don't consult, logic when you're making plans.
Now, what are the options here? So obviously Venezuela's in a tough spot, right? Maybe they owe money to other countries. Their oil process, they used to make a lot of oil, sell oil. That got hurt by the Canadian shale oil, some of the new technologies, getting fracking oil. What can they do? Obviously, the Keynesian side is going to say, keep with the money. Right? They're devaluing the money now. They're trying to find the floor of wherever this inflation is going to stop, and it's going to start going back up, and they're going to save the day. Whereas maybe the Austrian side would say, well, what do they really need that money for? What does the Venezuelan government lose if they just give up on their currency and start using Bitcoin? Obviously, they lose a lot of this ability of the government to print money, ability of the government to influence the economy. All of that goes away. I don't know. I mean, and their power, like really, they'd lose their power. They don't want to give up their power. Other than that, I mean, could they go Bitcoin theoretically, all things equal?
Well, any answer to any question by a Keynesian is to print more money. It doesn't matter what it is. Print more money. That's always their solution. We know where this ends up, right? So printing more money is definitely not the solution. What is a good solution is getting any form of centralized planning out of the money production. Because, communism doesn't work, socialism doesn't work. It's a calculation problem. The government just does not know, it doesn't even fathom on how much money is the right money to be produced, or if they should if they should decrease the money supply. It's just not going to happen. So what they should do is just say, okay, we messed up on this currency. Let's use something else. They might use something like the dollar to say, okay, the dollar might be a bit better. It's not that much better. It's probably actually even worse because the dollar has not yet started its hyperinflation, which will eventually start. Or they could just say, well, consumers, our citizens, the people, the individuals, the human beings, you just choose whichever you want to choose. We, the government, will no longer force you to do anything, to use this currency or not to use it. And of course, if the consumers will use a sound money, such as gold and Bitcoin, they just have to accept that.
Well, that just sounds like chaos, though. If the government's not enforcing an official money and people are just trading randomly in the street, a goat for this and a goat for that, how much of a piece of goat is a piece of bread? I don't know. That sounds really risky. I'm not sure if they're ready for Bitcoin yet, technically, if they have the infrastructure, if they all have phones, if they have a good cell phone network. I'm not sure it's the right place for a digital currency. Sadly, Bitcoin doesn't really have a good paper alternative. Any kind of paper Bitcoin is always really untrustworthy to me. You might have stolen the keys already, just waiting for me to accept it. So it might not be the right place, but I still think some kind of monetary standard would encourage trade and lead to more trade. But then again, that same argument could be made for a universal language, and people say that's a horrible, racist idea, et cetera, et cetera. But I kind of believe in that too. It's like, it's just simpler because we can talk to each other. And that's a simple idea. But
Well, yeah, absolutely. It is really, really simple to use one language because then you can communicate with the maximum amount of people, right? And same is true of money. There is a natural tendency towards one money because everyone is using the same money. Well, then, you can do as many transactions as you want, the maximum amount of it in the economy. But you shouldn't force people to do that. You should give people the option because guess what? I do not know what you, Tom, is like. And if I would say you have to use Bitcoin Cash or you have to use Dogecoin, that just wouldn't make any sense, right? Much rather, what we have in Bitcoin right now is freedom. You can choose whatever currency you want. You can use Dogecoin, you can use Bcash, you can use whatever you want. But which currency do you use? Well, I guess it's most likely Bitcoin, right? Why? Because you as an individual choose to use the best currency that you think is the best and most suitable for you, which in your case, and absolutely in my case, is Bitcoin. So there will be a natural tendency towards this one single money that will increase the maximum amount of trades in the economy, but this has to be voluntary. And actually what this book is talking about, that because of this incredible amount of high inflation in Weimar Germany, just as in Venezuela, just as it's going to hit in Europe and America, because the currency itself will devaluate so drastically, this causes a bunch of harm. But one of the things is that you can no longer use it as a medium of exchange, store of value, unit of account. So you fall back into barter exchange. But you only fall back into barter exchange if the government forces you to use this worthless piece of paper as a money or nothing else, right? So if the government would say you can use this worthless piece of paper, but if you want to use something different, well, then you do not have to rely on barter. You can just use Bitcoin or gold as your money.
I would agree with that, but still, if I went to Doge land or land of the Doge and they were all using Dogecoin, I think it would be only polite of me to convert my dollars into Dogecoin to interface better with the local economy. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And what the people of Dogeland could do is say, well, Thomas, we like you and all, but we just want to use Dogecoin and we do not want to use anything else. So either you use Dogecoin, then you can do business with us. But if you don't, we choose not to do business with you. We're just going to ignore you. And that's their right. They can do it. They might be dicks about it, but yeah, they can. Absolutely.
And we're seeing some good quotes in the chat as we head towards the end of this show. Let me show you what people have been saying. I like this, what Paul said. He said, we're in a time of enlightenment, and that it relates to all things: poverty, money, privacy, racism, feminism, acceptance, and that the battle will be fought through education, and that Bitcoin's only part of the story. I think that's a great quote to end on. And just one more time, we wanted to show the QR code. Oh, it's not working. It's on the wrong window. Okay, I'm going to change screen shares. I love how Google hides the interface, so it's constantly disappearing. It just makes the app that much harder to use. But yeah, you can always support the World Crypto Network with the Bitcoin address on our screen right now. We're running a couple of Tallycoin fundraisers right now that my friend DJ Booth wrote the software based on my idea. One of them, we're trying to raise $1 million. We're up to $15.09. The number keeps fluctuating with the price of Bitcoin. It's pretty cool. And if you got a couple of extra bucks, donate to Max's fundraiser. They want to give away dollars. They want to give away dollars in Bitcoin at this convention thing they're going to. And they're worried that they're going to give out too much dollars and not have enough money for rent and food. So donate Max a few dollars. These dollars will be given away to new people. Yeah, Tallycoin needs to put the QR code on the screen better. It's not quite working for a single screen fundraiser, but here's Max's fundraiser for the small amount. You could buy this whole fundraiser right now with 0.03. Chris Ellis always used to tell us, like, just tell the people they can buy the whole fundraiser. Just tell them they can buy it with $1 million, and whatever happens, you can just buy it right now. You don't have to waste your time with all this nickel and diming. You can just buy it right now. And if you want to buy this whole fundraiser, you could buy it for 125 Bitcoin. It's a very good deal. You could get the entire fundraiser. It's a great deal. And people say, shut up. All right, well, come on, chat people. We've been talking all day here. Max, do you have anything to say in closing? Go ahead.
Well, that was actually hilarious. And yeah, please, support the World Crypto Network. They've been doing this stuff for quite some time, and I'm honored to be on those shows. And 3 shows today, come on, that's like almost a full TV session by now. That's amazing.
And spoiler alert, I am trying to get Twitch running for later in the day. I'm considering broadcasting No Man's Sky, that space exploration game that isn't very good, that they keep making new versions of, and they keep giving to us for free. And I keep saying, did they make it right this time? Did they make it right this time? And some people in the chat like my Chris Ellis impersonation. They're like, that's spot on. That's spot on, Tom. That's spot on.
It actually really is good. It is amazing.
Well, I miss Chris. I wish he'd come back on some shows and hang out. I hope he's doing well. I think Chris is working for Digital Bitbox right now, doing those cool hardware wallets in Europe and full nodes and stuff like that. So very cool. Shout out to Chris Ellis. But Max, you're in charge. I think you get to end the show today. So go ahead. I'm throwing it to you.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to Vantigon for supporting to the World Crypto Network with $10 in a super chat. And save yourself. Don't get married. Well, I am single. I do not know if Thomas is single, but well, so far, you know, we did save ourselves and did not get married. Let's see where the world will take us, right? Well, guys, thank you very much for joining us here on this kind of late night show, for at least for me, and not for you American guys. So it was always, as always, a pleasure talking to you all. Go to the World Crypto Network website and check us out there. Donate to the World Crypto Network if you so choose. You can find my stuff on Twitter at HillibrandMax and at towardsliberty.com/anarchy if you want to support my paper on why we neither need nor want government regulation in Bitcoin. Because we want to prevent this. Because with governments, monies always die. So that has been basically it. Thomas, any words in closing?
Bye-bye.